Hello, everybody, and welcome to WOTS Weekly Features. Today, we are featuring author and community organizer Derek Künsken alongside Rebecca Lovatt, who is the assistant manager at our much-beloved Bakka Phoenix Books. Together, we're going to get a sneak peek at Derek's novel, The House of STYX, which is launching next week, and then we're going to talk about the place of science fiction and fantasy in CanLit today. WOTS Toronto operates on land that is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Anishinaabeg and Allied Nations to care for and share the resources around the Great Lakes in peace. We encourage you to educate yourself about the land that you live on, wherever it is that you're tuning in from. So our first guest today is Derek. Hello, Derek. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
I'm so glad. Derek has got quite an impressive bio. After leaving molecular biology, first line, Derek worked with street kids in Central America before finding himself in the Canadian Foreign Service. He now writes science fiction in Gatineau, Quebec. His short fiction has appeared in Analog, Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Clark's World, and many times in Asimov's, as well as several years' best anthologies. His first space opera novel, The Quantum Magician, was a finalist for the Aurora, the Locus, and the Chinese Nebula Awards, and its sequel, The Quantum Garden, was nominated for the Aurora. The House of STYX, which is the start of a new space opera duology, details events that occur 250 years prior to The Quantum Magician and has received starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and the Library Journal. And we're going to get into that today. But first, I'm also going to bring in our good friend Becca at Bakka. Hello, welcome.
Hello, lovely to see you guys again.
Yes. So for those of you at home who don't know, Becca works with the estimable Bakka Phoenix Books, which is the oldest sci-fi fantasy bookstore in Canada that is still going strong, and has a wonderful selection behind her today. So I think let's start off with a short reading from House of STYX, and then I can't wait to jump into discussion with both of you.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm reading from just near the start of the book. It's an introduction of the family and their home, and they live in the clouds of Venus, and the father and one of the sons has just been outside, and one of the sons got a bit of a scrape on his survival suit, so some of the acid of the clouds has gotten in, and so that's where we're starting. So the hot carbon dioxide blew them dry. They cycled through the airlock and climbed up into the outer layer of the habitat. This ring, more like the inside of a torus, was woody, walled, veined with thick webs of vasculature, and spotted on the floor with quietly flexing pumps. This outer ring held 1.5 atmospheres of pressure, 60 degrees cooler than the atmosphere outside. They moved to the next airlock and cycled through to the wide living area. Alexis, blonde and 10 years old, stood 2 meters from them, almost hopping with excitement. But he didn't cross the line his grandfather had made on the floor. Pascal and his father were still hot to the touch, and they might have missed some acid. Lightning hit the Cosa Pascal. Lightning hit us, Alexis said. Jean-Eudes stood beside Alexis, almost as excited, but also anxious. Jean-Eudes was shorter than their father, and the first flecks of gray spotted his beard at 27. He worked as an assistant to Georges Etienne. He could be fastidiously good at reading dials, cleaning equipment, and changing filters, as well as keeping Alexis occupied. Jean-Eudes was Venus' only Down syndrome child. Did you see the lightning, Alexis said? Did you see it? It was so loud, Jean-Eudes said. Pascal and Georges Etienne hissed open the seals of their helmets and took them off. The air was clean, 26 degrees, pressurized to just 1 atmosphere. You ripped your suit, Alexis exclaimed, pointing at Pascal's legs. Jean-Eudes moaned in worry, but didn't cross the line on the floor. I patched it, Pascal said. His father put down their helmets, shucked his gloves, and sat Pascal down right there. Bring me the medical kit, Alexis, Georges Etienne said. Jean-Eudes, get him some water, or something stronger if he wants it. Jean-Eudes ran after his bolting nephew, but turned back uncertainly. You want something stronger, Pascal? Water is good. The stinging got worse now. Georges Etienne unfolded a knife and sliced through the patches and wrapping that Pascal had made around his legs. Any pain under the suit, he asked. Alexis ran up with the medical bag and dropped it beside his grandfather, who pushed him back beyond the line on the floor. A little. Georges Etienne looked at the angry red burns on his son's legs and started dabbing sodium bicarbonate all over them with a soft brush. He gingerly lifted the edges of the shredded pant leg and brushed the paste underneath. He brushed his own fingers similarly, then moved to the next edge. You burn yourself again? Pascal asked through gritted teeth. Not the first time, Pascal. Not the first time, his father said, brushing Pascal's legs more quickly. You'll burn your fingers when you have your own children. I lost count of the fingertip burns I got from cleaning up Marthe and Emile and Chloé. He became quiet. They didn't usually mention Chloé in front of Alexis. Mama got her legs burnt too? Alexis asked quietly. Not so much, Georges-Etienne said. Your mama was always too smart to damage her suit, not like your uncle's, or Marthe. Calvaire, don't get me started on Marthe. That girl could get an acid burn in her hammock. Despite the tension, that got Alexis giggling. Jean-Eudes knelt beside Pascal with a closed cup of water. How come Jean-Eudes gets to cross the line, Alexis complained. He doesn't ask too many questions, Georges-Etienne said. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. I'm so fascinated. I'm like, okay, there's these family dynamics happening. And like, also, I'm just personally enjoying all of the French names. Like you so rarely see that. So thank you for that. So tell us a little bit about House of Styx. Like, what can readers expect from this family and their foibles?
I have Quebecois roots. And so at one point when I was developing this story, I realized that not only because I wanted to, but because the story made a lot of sense. I wanted to have a separatist Quebec be the ones that colonized Venus. And so they live in the clouds, but it's really poor. And it recapitulates to some extent what the situation was like under, sort of colonial Quebec when the Anglos were in charge of the banks and the foreign policy and the military and everything else. And so this colony is struggling. And within the colony, there's other families, and some of them are, a little less, living off the grid. And so it's this one family that's living off the grid. It's a bit of a Godfather story, and this family discovers something that can change their own family fortunes as well as the fortunes of the colonie. But there's a lot of other forces that are sort of colonial in nature that could stop them.
I can't wait. Like it's whenever we combine, we get a lot of these genre bending things happening now in genre fiction in general. Like, here's the trope. It's like a sort of like, there's a family thing, there's a crime thing, there's a mup, but then also it's in space. It's like, but to be able to actually, as you quite often do with your other works, like you're so meticulous with making the world building actually make sense of like, okay, but like, what are the repercussions for this? Like, what's the education like, and what's the political structure like? And not just like, it's not just aesthetic. It actually finds its way into the plot and into very sort of impactful things that happen to the characters. So joyful. I can't wait. So we're going to get to hear more of it also next week. Is that correct? Becca, yes. I know that, yes. We're going to be having a longer reading at Bakka Phoenix's virtual launch.
Yes, Tuesday the 25th at 5 p.m. on Facebook Live.
5 p.m. So do you have anything special planned for this? Like, do you know what you're going to bring to the table as far as readings go? Do you have any sort of like cute things that are, I shouldn't say cute, but like anything that's exciting and surprising? Do you have surprises for us, Derek?
So many surprises. No, Becca and I have been talking about kinds of questions that might be that we might solicit from fans and stuff before the event. The other thing is I haven't decided what to read yet, and I think that's partly because I also read Ephemeres or Ephemera. Sorry, I keep calling it Ephemeres because I'm trained as a biochemist and I want to turn it into an enzyme. But so no, I'm still deciding what to read, and that's going to be fun. But then as well, we have book plates. So there's a bunch of signed book plates so that Bakka will be able to send out signed editions to people. And this is the first printing. So if people are collectory people, then there you go.
Book plates are always so much fun to have. I used to not know what they were. Like, I thought they were just stickers for like anything. I would just put them on things. And I was like, oh no, you're supposed to put those inside the, I see now.
Well, it just means you now have like an author signed fridge.
Right. Sign of approval. Yeah, absolutely. So I would love to hear a little bit about Bakka as a community space. So we have, again, this wonderful launch coming up next Tuesday. You also, Bakka Phoenix, Becca, have another launch happening the next day, if I remember correctly, with E.K. Johnston.
Yes, that will be for her new novel, Aetherbound, and that will be the 26th at 5 p.m.
The 26th, the very next day, right? So you folks are really busy. And I also want to bring in that, Derek, in your capacity as an author, you get to kind of do these events and participate in them as a reader. But in your capacity as an organizer for CanCon, you get to organize these events and to like set them up and do the logistics. So both of you have a lot of experience in maintaining communities in the speculative literature community, in CanLit. And so I wanted to know from both of you a little bit about what it's been like to preserve and maintain those communities, even during this like absolutely bonkers year and a half that we've had.
I think like starting off helping run CanCon was a lot about pulling together friends and trying to make new friends. Really, that's what community is like. And at the same time, in the making new friends field, we've got to reach out to people who are, that we haven't met before, and frankly, who aren't, who bring diverse voices to the table. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate, both about what Bakka's been doing and what CanCon's been trying to do. And I think during the pandemic, like, you'd think that we would stop making new friends, but with all of the social media going on, there are writers, even from Toronto, that I've met only in the last 18 months, whom I've never met in person. And, we're not meeting in person for a while yet. And yet, we've had them on panels, and, we've been trying to boost people's new books and stuff like that. And it's all about just like, there's a charge you can get about trying to boost up other people, and then everybody feels good. And I have to say, too, I super appreciate everything that Becca and Bakka Phoenix do, because as a new writer, I'd been trying to be a writer for decades and decades, and it didn't feel real to me until I had my book launch at Bakka. And it was such a sort of emotional moment for me in my life that, like, oh my God, look, people showed up. Some of them I don't know. And it was a real thing. And just knowing that Bakka has like these salespeople who like have read these books, and so they can really, you'd love this one, and you'd love this one, and like just so appreciative of everything that Bakka does as well.
Absolutely. I wanted to especially get in, Becca, to your skills as a recommender. And as like, I think over the phone at one point, I mentioned you had like this encyclopedic knowledge, not just of the books on your shelves, but of the tastes of the people who frequent your establishment. So yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about what it's been like as that community space during this virtual time for you.
Well, it's been a bit odd. In some ways, I was thinking like, when we switched to virtual, it's like, cool, we're going to get this huge breadth of authors. It doesn't matter where they are. We can still do launches with them. Every launch we've done has been with a local author, which is still fantastic. We love supporting those voices, but I was like, cool. I think that every event except for one has been with an author we've done events with in the past, which is like, great. We still get to support your voices. We still get to broadcast that. You're still having new books out. And it's actually a weird thing with E.K. Johnston's launch next week. That was the first virtual launch we did, was with E.K. Johnston. So we're kind of coming to that publishing cycle of, things are weird. But as a community space, last summer, we opened up for appointments only. We had a half-hour window, come shop, do your thing. And I would say about half the people who had appointments just came to chat.
Really?
They weren't here for books. They were here like, hi, you know me, let's talk. And that was really lovely. But otherwise, yeah, it's something I think we all miss here is the recommendations. Because, you go on the website, you order your books, you pick them up, we mail them out. And it's very transactional, which isn't what we're used to.
Yeah.
We're more of a, last time you were here, you bought this book, you need to buy this one right now.
You guys are like book sommeliers.
Yeah, exactly. We have such refined understanding of what's going on.
I say book bartender, but sommelier sounds a lot nicer.
Depends on who's coming in the door, right? Like,
you want more of the usual. Gonna just switch it up today?
Exactly. So in that case, I want to hear some recommendations. Seeing as, again, like you say, it's very different from just like poking through people's Amazon wish lists, like to have a human being who has thoughtfully considered something that they would recommend. I know we don't exactly have a specific human being here, but the general audience is still the general audience. But I want to hear from each one of you, actually. So Derek, you're not off the hook either. One staff pick, a book either that you have deeply enjoyed recently that you want to foist onto as many hands as possible, or one that you are looking incredibly forward to getting your hands on. We'll start with Becca because it's her job to know these things. We'll give you a second, Derek.
Sarah Rayleigh has a new book coming out this fall. I haven't read it yet, but it's about an African tightrope dancer who is immortal, doesn't remember her past, and gets embroiled in a secret society's gladiatorial tournament. And that just sounds brilliant. Looking forward to that one.
The pitch alone.
Yeah.
I've seen the cover art. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that one is definitely one of the fall titles where I'm just like, I want this now. Where do I get an ARC?
Yep. Derek, what about you? Do you have something that you want to shout out?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Book of M by Pung Shepherd. It came out, I think, a year and a half or 2 years ago, and the prose is just so beautiful, and it's like post-apocalyptic magic realism almost. Like what's going on is not clear, but people are losing their memory as stuff goes on, and just like the relationships and the way they evolve with this decaying memory is just so beautiful. And then you've got this entire post-apocalypse thing going on as well, which is, it's really good. Anyway, Pung Shepherd's Book of M.
A book for our times, post-apocalyptica.
I'll do a little bookseller thing. Pung Shepherd has a new book coming out later this year called The Cartographers.
Yeah.
There we go. See, this is why we need you. Because you know these things and you make these connections. So let's see, want to bring up, actually, before I bring up the meat of the conversation, one thing that I do want to bring up is that all of these books can be purchased at Bakka Phoenix. And in fact, for the week of this recording, this is a time-sensitive thing, up until Sunday, you can go and get any of the books that WOTS has featured on our Across the Universe stage in partnership with Bakka Phoenix for the last 2 years. That's 2019 and 2020. For 15% off, which is very exciting in this time when we have lots of books that we want to read and perhaps minimal resource to obtain them. And this includes House of Styx, actually. So if you are interested, if you're intrigued by what Derek has shared today, if you can't wait for Tuesday, you can pre-order your copy at a slight discount up until Sunday. So let's talk about CanLit. Let's talk about science fiction and fantasy in CanLit. For anyone at home who doesn't know this, because it seems like it's a mainstay, it's actually not. The Across the Universe stage that WOTS has been presenting with Bakka Phoenix has only actually existed since 2019. It's only 2 years old. And this year we have, genre programming that we will be including in our virtual festival, but it's an incredibly, it's a newborn as far as our mainstay programming goes, which I think speaks to a larger prejudice that has existed in CanLit against, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, even romance to an extent. And luckily I see this changing. So I would love to hear a little bit about both of you and your hopes for genre fiction as lovers of it, as readers of it, as participants in, the conversations around it. I want to know your thoughts on this. And maybe I'll start with Derek this time.
Sure. So with CanLit, I think one of the things that CanLit does really well is it examines some of the sort of concerns that, happen within, Canada. I think science fiction has a broader canvas to paint on. It's talking about humanity. It's talking about the future. It's talking about human nature. And so this question comes up a lot for me because I've been lucky enough to go to China a few times as a writer. And, one of the questions I occasionally get asked is, what do you think of Chinese science fiction, or what is Canadian science fiction? And honestly, the concerns of science fiction are international, right? You can have a story like, Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin that will be dealing with first contact. And yes, he brought definitely a Chinese sensibility to it. And Chinese concerns, but there's more human concerns with it as well. And so I think, and you can easily map that over to, let's say, Arthur C. Clarke or any of his successors in, this big first contact sort of story. And ultimately, science fiction is not talking about the future. It's using the future to talk about us right now. And so the thing is, if science fiction is done well, it just comes at the present and who we are as people from a 90-degree difference from anything that the mainstream literary can do when you like, because regular literature has to stick within certain conventions, right? And so, yeah, all right, I hope that wasn't too meandering.
Not at all. No, absolutely. It's funny. I heard this from author Leah Bobbitt the first time that I heard this, but the concept of a genre as being a social contract between an author and their readers about what kinds of things you are going to agree should be in whatever this thing is. Yeah. And so, literary fiction also has those agreements in place. And they are agreements that as speculative fiction writers, you do not have to necessarily abide by. So that's really cool. Becca, what do you think? As a bookseller, as somebody who's really tapped into that side of things, into appetites, literary appetites, what's going on?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, CanLit often, like, evokes feelings of, like, dark, brooding weather, solitude, contemplative.
Pathetic fallacy everywhere.
And just like, and often, you think of CanLit authors, the names they'll come are like Alice Munro, Michael Ondaatje, Margaret Atwood. And it kind of, I feel a lot of the time, Canadian science fiction and the authors aren't taken as seriously as to be like on the same level. Like, I did a publishing program, and in the trade thing, I think it was a Robin Hobb book with me, and the instructor's like, cool, does anyone have a book that I can just demonstrate some things with? Pulled up that, and they were like, well, no, I meant an actual book.
Ooh.
I feel like it's starting to change, especially when we have such big shows that are coming out that are all science fiction based. The perception is starting to change, but there's just a long time where I feel like science fiction fantasy is just not taken as seriously. When we have so many like fantastic Canadian sci-fi fantasy authors, we have like Derek here, we've got Fonda Lee, we've got Guy Kay, we've got Rob Sawyer, we've got now
Evan Winter.
Evan Winter, yes,
fantastic writer.
I think we need to and are perhaps starting to see them starting to be taken as like serious authors, not just writing those silly stories. And yeah, as Derek says, it does give it the opportunity to examine self and current society and the way that views could change. I think any of that makes sense.
It totally does.
I think too, though, that sometimes we approach this question almost with the assumption that like the audience is one monolithic thing, and maybe science fiction is getting close to being appealing to this monolithic thing. But in the end, you've got people who love CanLit, and so CanLit is for them, right? And then you've got people who love my kind of space opera, and I'm for them. And then you've got people who will enjoy cyberpunk, and Stanley Chan may be very popular with them, for example. And so I think it's always important to sort of figure out what the audience wants and like recognize that there are many parts of the audience, and there's critical success and there's commercial success, and then there's the I wanted something to read on the beach success, right? And I mean, there's all of those things can coexist in the marketplace without any contradiction.
Absolutely. I think I said this on a previous feature when Eric Kim was on here. We were talking about like how seriously people do or do not take their own work. And what I said was that the fun is underrated, right? To just be entertained and to have that breath of fresh air and that playful space is, especially right now, I'm going to say, vital to the human spirit, right? To be able to continue on to the next day, right? So I think, Derek, much like you're saying, we approach this question from a very interesting, like almost defensive angle a lot of the time. Like we're trying to be like, oh no, trust me, like it's serious now. Like it's like trying to capitulate to that versus just being able to dwell in really what it is and not be like, don't worry, it's fantasy, but it's like serious. It's like grim face. Like, no, it's a romp, and that's good and fun, and also has as much of a place as like the very cerebral literary fiction that we can see. And also there is cerebral sci-fi and cerebral fantasy, and it's all equally good. It's just different. But yeah, I'm glad to hear, Becca, that you are seeing like the perception open up and people sort of like dip their toes into everybody else's like pools. Because I think everyone can benefit from reading widely.
Yeah. And it's just like, cool. Science fiction forces you to see a perspective that isn't your own. It could never be your own. You are probably never going to be mining oxygen on Venus. Like,
You're not going to space. Like, I mean, who knows? Anything could happen. Our expectations have already been upturned once. So here we are at the end of of our 20, well, it's been 25 minutes because y'all are just so much fun to talk to. But thank you for both coming and deciding to have a little chatter with me this afternoon about just CanLit and SFF and Derek's new book, which once again is going to be launching officially through Bakka Phoenix's virtual launch on Tuesday, May 25th. It's the 25th, right? I'm looking at the calendar right now. The 25th of May at 5 p.m. I always worry that things are at 7 p.m. and they're not. They're at 5. So go to their Facebook page. You can register there, or you can go check out BakkaPhoenixBooks.com. You can also go to Bakka Phoenix's website for our 15% off. All kinds of books that we have featured in the genre space in the last 2 years, up to and including House of Styx. And yeah, thank you both so much. This has been a wonderful little chatter, and enjoy your afternoons.
Yeah, you too. Thank you,
so
Sienna. Thank you, Derek.
And for everybody else at home, you can find Derek's novel, The House of Styx, alongside all the other Out of This World books at BakkaPhoenix.com. Tomorrow, we are going to be having a discussion on this channel about social justice and literature with our friends from Another Story Bookshop. For discounts and deals, you can check out toronto.thewordonthestreet.ca/weekly-features. And from me and my team at WOTS to all of you, happy Indie Bookstore Week. Thanks very much.